I can't say that I have an earliest memory of music. It was always there. You know, if it wasn't the hi-fi, it was the radio. You know what I mean? It was always there. I began writing about jazz as a student at Kent State University. I was no longer under the same roof as my father's record collection. So now I had to get my own record collection. And that's when the thirst really began to grow. My roommates and my brothers, my Omega brothers, became my first audience. When I graduated from Kent, my father had become aware, because I'd shared some of the things I'd written, he'd become aware of the fact that I was interested in writing about the music. And so I came down to the Plain Dealer and I talked to Bob Roach, and he decided to engage me as a writer about jazz. The regional arts agency that represented Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, that was formerly known as Great Lakes Arts Alliance. Great Lakes Arts Alliance said, "Whoa, we want to have a jazz program. Let's institute a jazz program." So the hang fly attitude that I had at the beginning, it paid off because they engaged me to run this new program. Unbeknownst to me in the beginning, they had been having merger conversations with the Regional Arts Agency of the Upper Midwest states. And they merged and they became Arts Midwest. A man named David Freyer was to be the director of this new agency, Arts Midwest. He determined that, okay, well, we're gonna make this jazz program, we're gonna make it a core program of Arts Midwest. And we spent 4 years there developing the jazz program at now Arts Midwest. I left Arts Midwest to take an opportunity in Washington, D.C. at the National Jazz Service Organization in 1989. It was an opportunity to bring some of the things that we had found to be successful and were developing in their success at Arts Midwest to bring them on a national level. Audience development has always been one of my biggest platforms because that's the way we sustain what we do, by developing our audience. Because the audience so often dictates the capacity of what we do. And then when I got to DC, I met a man named Tom Porter who invited me to WPFW to check it out, to be interviewed. And eventually I got my own program and been there ever since. 35 years at WPFW. From Witten's album, Crescent City Christmas. Preceding that, we were in Trinidad. Randy Weston influenced me in so many ways, working with him on his autobiography. And one of the great fascinations that came out of my relationship with Randy was not only the African roots, but also the involvement of jazz musicians, or the engagement of jazz musicians who, of course, learned and developed their craft here in this country, but the engagements that jazz musicians had in Africa, like Randy. Black music is at the core of American music, and you don't find as many black music journalists, writers, critics, and whatnot. And I just began having some very productive interviews with various black jazz writers and various black music writers, that it seemed like this might be a book. What it is writers expressing their story of how they achieved bylines, writing about this music specifically and about music in general. And then in 2015, the opportunity came to be artistic director of the DC Jazz Fest.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 18th annual DC Jazz Fest.
We're bringing jazz to the very young through our various programs. That's the main thrust of our jazz education program. One of the beauties of presenting this event in the nation's capital is the fact that we have a robust community of foreign embassies. Every country has its core of exceptional jazz musicians. And as I say, this music it's an international language. Jazz is. It's Ancient Future Radio from now till midnight. Stay tuned.